The Galactic Concord's Grand Gala on Therian Prime was a place of shimmering light, floating orchestras, and languages that echoed like songs through the air. Human diplomat Liam Renshaw stood awkwardly in his stiff, formal suit, feeling as if every move he made was being judged by 100 alien eyes because, quite literally, it was. Earth had only recently joined the Concord, and this gala was its first chance to make an impression among beings who had ruled the stars for centuries. Towering insectoid generals with jeweled limbs moved gracefully between tables, radiant avian. Nobles perched on floating platforms, and telepathic beings spoke without words but with glances that seemed to pierce Liam's very thoughts. He tried to look confident, but every step felt off. Every gesture slightly too slow or too quick. His translation device worked, but not well enough to help him understand the cultural nuances swirling around him. He edged closer to the refreshment. Table some comfort and food, perhaps, but his escape plan failed when he turned and accidentally bumped into a tall figure clad in obsidian. Armor with glowing lines etched across its surface. The impact wasn't hard, but it drew attention. Liam looked up, panned up to find himself face to face with Commander Virachel of the Kailari Dominion, a species both feared and admired for their discipline, power, and regal bearing. Violet eyes locked onto him with piercing curiosity and something sharper, something that warned him he had just made a mistake. Instinct took over. With a nervous chuckle, trying to ease the tension, Liam blurted, "Hey, beauty queen." The words hung in the air like a dropped crystal. Round them conversations halted. Music slowed. The room froze. Araya's gaze narrowed. For a heartbeat, Liam thought he was about to be vaporized on the spot. She took a single step forward, towering over him, and hissed, "Watch your mouth, human." His heart pounded so loud it drowned out the silence around him. Prepared. To apologize, to run, to vanish anything, to fix what he'd just done. But instead of striking him or calling the guards, Viraya tilted her head and smirked. Just a little, quiet, dangerous curve of her lips that no one expected. "Interesting," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange amusement. "I've never been insulted with such creativity." The crowd started to breathe again, but whispers raced across the room like sparks. Liam, stunned but standing his ground, managed a half-smile. Whatever just happened had changed something. The Kailari were known to be humorless and strict, yet she hadn't punished him. She had acknowledged him. Not as a threat, maybe, but no longer as an invisible background character in a room full of stars. As the music resumed and the gala continued, Liam realized something else: he had just become the most talked-about human in the room, for better or worse. And Viraya? She had walked away, her long cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. Bye. But not before glancing over her shoulder, one eyebrow raised in what could only be a challenge. Liam had made a mistake. Sure, but it might have been the best one of his diplomatic career. In the days following the gala, Liam Renshaw found himself in an unexpected position, no longer invisible among the stars, but watched, whispered about, and, to his growing confusion, repeatedly invited to Kailari events. The biggest surprise came when Commander Virachel herself sent a formal message. Written in the precise and ceremonial style of her people, requesting his presence for a private match of Zarok, the Kailari's traditional strategic war simulation. The invitation was rare enough, but what made it stranger was that Zarok wasn't just a game, it was a form of diplomatic combat. It's filled with unspoken tests of logic, honor, and cultural knowledge. Most humans wouldn't even attempt it, knowing the chances of embarrassment were high. Still, Liam had little choice. Declining a Kailar invitation, especially from a commander, would send the wrong signal. So he arrived at the reserve chamber, where a massive holographic board flickered with stars, fleets, and strange glowing runes. Virya stood calmly on the other side, her expression unreadable, her eyes sharp and watchful. The match began slowly, with her placing ships and battle nodes in a way that seemed completely alien to Liam. He tried to follow the flow, but the rules twisted around logic and instinct until, without realizing it, he began playing it like chess. Back on Earth, Liam had been a junior champion in high school tournaments. His hands moved faster now, placing his pieces in a strategy that was less about dominance and more about misdirection. He mirrored her style just enough to appear respectful, but beneath it, he was building a trap. When the final move was made, a light flared across the board. Liam had won. Silence followed. Rhea stared at the display, then at him, her expression still calm, but her eyes lit with something sharp. She gave a short nod. "That was not expected," she said simply. It wasn't quite praise, but in Kailari terms, it was close. From that day, the whispers around Liam grew louder. Some said he had earned her respect. Others said she was simply studying him. But Liam had little time to think about it because a new event was announced, a grand diplomatic dinner for all Concord species, including Earth's delegation. Held under a massive crystal dome with views of the stars, the dinner was a theater of formality, where every dish, every gesture, every word carried layered meaning. Liam did his best to follow protocol, but halfway through the meal, he began to feel strange lightheaded, his throat dry, vision beginning to blur. At first he thought it was nerves, but then he noticed the look on Verez's face. She had stood suddenly, her body tense. She crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed his wrist. Her voice was low, sharp, and direct. "Someone has poisoned your drink," she said. She did not wait for permission or reaction. She pressed a capsule into his hand and made him swallow it before others even realized something was wrong. The moment passed and Liam sat in stunned silence, the world slowly clearing around him. Later, in a private chamber where she had taken him to recover, he finally asked her why she had helped. "You're a representative of a fragile alliance," she answered without emotion. "Your death would cause political imbalance. I acted for strategic reasons." But Liam noticed her hand had trembled just slightly when she administered the antidote. Word of the incident spread quickly, and so did the questions. Why would a Kailari commander risk her own standing to protect a human diplomat? Had Vera broken protocol for emotion, or was she playing a deeper game? The Kailari rarely formed personal attachments outside their own kind, and their politics were not known for sentiment. Now curiosity turned to suspicion. Some accused Earth of manipulation. Others warned that the Kailari might be hiding secrets of their own. Liam found himself at the center of a quiet storm. He didn't know if Viria had truly saved him out of duty or something else, and he wasn't sure what worried him more. One thing was certain, he was no longer just a minor figure in the background, and as he lay awake that night in his assigned quarters, staring at the alien sky beyond the transparent ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something neither he nor Vera had planned. And whatever it was, it had only just begun. News of a missing Alliance freighter drifting on the edge of uncharted space spread through the Concord like a quiet alarm, soft but dangerous. The freighter, carrying advanced communication equipment, meant to improve Earth's link with the Concord systems, had vanished without sending a distress call. Suspicion rippled across the council, and Commander Vera Chell was immediately assigned to investigate. Not only because she was known for her ruthless efficiency, but because the freighter's cargo had links to both Earth and Kailari systems. What surprised everyone, however, was her firm request that Liam Renshaw accompany her not as an observer, but as an official member of her diplomatic crew. The Concord Council hesitated, but her reputation held weight, and they reluctantly agreed. Liam soon found himself aboard the KSV Vengeance, a Kailari warship that looked less like a ship and more like a silver blade floating through the stars. Inside, everything was cold, sharp, and disciplined. Kailari soldiers moved in perfect sync, speaking in clipped tones and following orders with military precision. Liam, in his slightly wrinkled uniform and overly friendly smile, stood out like a cat in a room full of statues. He fumbled through protocols, misunderstood orders, and got lost in corridors that seemed to twist in ways that made no sense. But over time, something shifted. When one of the ship's repair drones malfunctioned, Liam fixed it using an old trick with a paperclip and duct tape, a method that earned both confusion and quiet approval. When the ship's communication logs crashed during a long-range scan, he restored the data using a basic Earth coding tool that Kailari had dismissed as outdated. Slowly, the crew began to see him not as a weak link, but as a different kind of strength, creative, adaptable, and unpredictable in a way even the Kailari found useful. Vera watched all this with a careful eye, never praising him openly, but calling on him more often during tactical meetings and mission briefings. After several jumps across unstable wormholes, they finally reached the location where the freighter's last signal had been traced. At first there was nothing, just a dead field of broken asteroids and dark silence. Then the freighter appeared, seemingly adrift. It floated with its lights dimmed, no response to hails. Vera ordered a boarding party, taking Liam with her, despite the risk. Inside the freighter, things felt wrong. The lights flickered like a failing heartbeat. Strange marks covered the wall symbols not from any known Concord language. As the team moved deeper, sensors began to glitch, and then the trap was triggered. Hidden ships uncloaked from nearby asteroids, surrounding the Vengeance while boarding pods crashed into the freighter. A rogue faction, long thought extinct, launched their ambush, an alien group who opposed the alliance between Kailari and Earth and wanted to reignite old wars. Chaos followed. Rhea and her soldiers engaged the enemy in close combat while trying to extract critical data from the freighter's core. In the heat of the battle, Liam was cornered by two attackers. Thinking fast, he used a handheld tool to disable a power node, plunging the corridor into darkness and giving Vera time to strike from behind. But during the fight, her combat suit was pierced by an energy blade, sending her crashing into a bulkhead. She tried to rise, but her systems were failing. Without thinking, Liam rushed forward, dragging her to cover. Despite her protests, he used the broken pieces of a nearby panel, some emergency foam, and duct tape to seal her armor and restart her oxygen flow. When the blast doors opened and reinforcements arrived, they found Liam shielding her with nothing but a plasma cutter in his shaking hands. Back aboard the Vengeance, as repairs were made and the enemy retreated into the void, Vera sat quietly in the med bay, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. When Liam entered, awkward and unsure, she didn't greet him with her usual cold tone. Instead, she said, without looking at him, "You're more than comic relief, human. I see now. Earth might just be dangerous." The words hung between them, not as an insult, but as recognition. In that quiet space, filled with distant hums and the faint vibration of the ship moving through stars, something unspoken passed between them. Respect, maybe even trust. Liam didn't reply, because for once no joke was needed. He simply nodded, knowing that something had changed, just between them, but in the way the stars would see Earth from now on. Therian Prime shimmered with the same elegance and grandeur as before, but now the air felt heavier, charged with invisible tension. After the mission at the edge of space, Liam and Vera returned, not as quiet representatives, but as figures of interests, some admiring, others suspicious. Beneath the surface of formal greetings and polished words, something dark was beginning to crack open. Virea received encrypted messages from deep within the Kailari intelligence network, hinting that recent attacks, the poisoned dinner, and even the missing freighter were not isolated events. At first, the signs were subtle. Meeting requests canceled. Council members avoiding eye contact. Diplomatic files mysteriously restricted. Liam, though still officially Earth's junior diplomat, found himself pulled into secret briefings. Invited by Virea, not out of courtesy, but necessity. Together, they started pulling threads in a maze of political confusion, where every answer raised to new questions. Documents led them to Shadow Council's, a group of Concord members who believed Earth had entered the Alliance too soon and too untested, and they had been quietly working to ruin its image through staged incidents and carefully planted failures. Verez's connections within the Dominion helped them access hidden logs, and Liam's Earth-style thinking often noticed details others missed, like a misused diplomatic code or a falsified schedule. Their days blurred into strategy meetings and silent investigations, while their nights were filled with quiet walks through the tower-lined gardens of Therian Prime, speaking in low voices under artificial starlight. Their banter, once sharp and full of sarcasm, had softened into something warmer, more natural. When Viera called him ambassador for the first time, Liam didn't correct her. And when he addressed her as commander, It was without mockery, just quiet respect. One evening, inside an unused diplomatic archive, they uncovered the piece that changed everything, a message fragment buried under layers of encryption, outlining a coordinated plan for an assassination attempt during the upcoming Concord Unity Summit. The target list included Liam, 3 other Earth representatives, and even a neutral Concord arbitrator, meant to frame Earth as the aggressor. The summit, only 2 days away, was to be the symbol of unity, and someone was planning to turn it into a disaster. They knew they had to act fast, but couldn't trust official channels. Vera's own advisors were divided, some loyal, others perhaps already compromised. Liam offered a risky idea: go public with partial evidence, just enough to draw attention and let the pressure of scandal disrupt the plan. Vera disagreed at first, calling it reckless, but after a long pause, she looked at him differently, not as a junior diplomat, not as a liability, but as someone who saw a way out where others only saw a wall. "You're still impulsive," she said, "but maybe that's what we need." They split up to cover more ground, Vera, tracing the origins of the assassination team. Liam slipping into quiet side meetings with Earth's delegation, warning them without causing panic. The tension was like a storm waiting to break. Every movement on Therian Prime now seemed watched, every stranger a potential threat. When they met again late the night before the summit, their faces showed the same exhaustion, but their eyes carried focus. The plan was dangerous, the risks enormous, but the alternative was worse. As they stood facing each other in the silent council corridor, the lights dimmed for night cycle, Liam managed a half smile. "You know," he said, "this wasn't exactly what I expected when I said hi at the gala." Vera allowed herself a brief, quiet laugh, a rare sound that vanished quickly. And yet she replied, "I'm not sure the gala was the most dangerous part." With hours left before the summit, no guarantees of survival, and no time to second guess, they stepped into the shadows against 2 unlikely allies, bound now not by accident or order, but by shared purpose. And in that silent moment before action, they both understood. Whatever happened next would shape not just their futures, but Earth's place in the stars. The Grand Concord Assembly Chamber on Therian Prime was filled with leaders from across the galaxy, beings of all shapes, voices, and minds, gathered beneath a glowing dome that displayed stars in real time. It was meant to be a celebration, a moment of unity, with Earth formally confirmed as a permanent member of the Concord. But Liam Renshaw stood at the edge of the crowd, unease growing in his chest. The room felt too perfect, too still, and Vera, standing across the floor near her own delegation, gave him a subtle nod. She felt it too. Everything they had uncovered pointed to this moment, and though they had warned the right people and prepared as best they could, something about the quiet was wrong. Then, just as the central speaker began to read the ceremonial lines, the chamber lights flickered in. A false diplomatic order appeared on the central screen, declaring Earth responsible for sabotage within the Concord network. Panic rippled through the crowd. Before security could react, hidden panels in the ceiling slid open, and small drones glowing red and armed with advanced hacking tools rushed toward the assembly's control systems. Simultaneously, explosive charges planted earlier blew open to access corridors, sending a wave of chaos through the hall. Vera instantly shouted commands, drawing her sidearm as her Kailari squad formed a perimeter. Liam didn't have a weapon, but what he did have was knowledge. He recognized the drone's signal pattern, something he'd studied from Kailari files and cross-referenced with Earth's old security archives. Without waiting, he sprinted through the crowd, dodging falling debris and terrified delegates, and dove into the open security console near the rear wall. The Kailari interface was complex, but he had learned enough from the Vengeance mission to find his way around. While alarms screamed and guards rushed to defend the chamber, Liam began rerouting the internal defense systems manually, overriding the compromised Concord protocols and locking down drone control nodes one by one. Sparks flew as a drone tried to cut into a station, but he reached under the panel and used the same repair trick he had once mocked himself for: duct tape holding a fused wire, forcing a short burst to overload the drone's core. Meanwhile, Vera led her squad through the smoke-filled chamber, using advanced vision scans to track hidden attackers. Her voice remained calm as she barked orders, moving like a storm through the confusion. Then came the final wave. A cloaked figure emerged near the central speaker's platform, weapon in hand, heading for the Earth delegation. Liam, seeing it from across the chamber, shouted a warning. Virea reacted instantly, leaping into the fray with impossible speed. She collided with the attacker, knocking the weapon away, but a sharp blow cracked her shoulder guard. Liam left his console and ran, grabbing a fallen drone part as a makeshift weapon. Back to back, they fought through. The last attacker's awkward but determined, she precise and fierce. As the Concord security forces finally overwhelmed the last of the rogue faction's operatives, the chamber fell quiet again, smoke drifting through the dome as lights returned to normal. Delegates stared, shaken but safe, and eyes turned to the human and the Kailari who had stood in the fire and held the line. Hours later, after security teams confirmed that the threat had been contained, the Concord Assembly reconvened, not for ceremony this time, but for recognition, official. Honors were given, statements made, and for once, Earth's name was spoken with respect, not doubt. Liam and Virea stood side by side on the central platform, surrounded by beings from 100 worlds, and in that moment, everything they had fought for finally felt real. When it was over and the crowds had dispersed, they stepped into one of the garden balconies overlooking the city. The sky shimmered with orbital lights, and the air was calm. Virea looked at him, her usual sharp tone softened. "You've earned the right to call me that again once," she said, her lips curling into a faint, rare smile. Liam grinned, heart racing just like it had the first night they met. "Hey, beauty queen," he replied, voice full of fondness this time, not mockery. She turned sharply and gave him a mock glare. "Watch your mouth, human." And though the words were the same, everything had changed. He laughed, feeling the tension finally leave his chest, and looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, Earth now had a voice, a future, and a reputation earned not by force, but by courage, wit, and two unlikely allies who had proven that even in the most complex galaxy, humanity still had something powerful to offer.